Procrastination is when you delay doing something that you need to do. It's awful. We all do it, I'm sure. I do as well. Today I'm going to be giving you 4 tips on how to overcome procrastination and become more productive. Let's get into it. The first one is going to be recognize it. You need to be aware of when you're procrastinating. For me, I often procrastinate, and the way I know I procrastinate is when I get up to get a drink or start thinking about food or I start thinking about different tasks. I'll say to myself, I'm gonna go check what's in the kitchen, or say, I'm gonna go get a drink in the kitchen, or I just get up and go do something else. When I was working from home, I procrastinated a lot. I'd be like, let me go in the other room and maybe I gotta clean this thing up. So everyone procrastinates, I do as well. You need to be aware of it. It's the only way you're actually gonna be able to stop it is know when you're procrastinating. It really helps to take a mental note or even a physical note of when you procrastinated and what was the thing that you were escaping to. Because I think there's 2 reasons. One, it helps you identify when you're procrastinating in the future, but it also helps identify what's your safety essentially that you go to, right? To escape this tension. Being able to recognize it and understand it and really make peace with it. Procrastination is okay. Everyone does it. Sure, we all want to improve at it and that's something you should continue to do, but it's not this a binary thing where it's you procrastinate or you don't procrastinate. It's a spectrum. You ultimately want to be inching yourself closer to procrastinating less. That's the kind of goal. It's improvement. The goal is not perfection. In fact, perfection is a lot of times procrastination, where people think that, and I do this too, I don't have enough time to do it perfectly, and so therefore it gets put off forever. You really need to think about it that way and make peace with it that way. It's not the end of the world. Everyone procrastinates. Even David Goggins procrastinates. He talks about how he just stares at his sneakers for an hour before going out for a run. Everyone does it. Ultimately, what separates people is, do you do it in the end or do you not? So the first step, become aware of it, understand it, make peace with it, don't beat yourself up over it, and that'll be your first step towards improving your procrastination in work or whatever it is that you're doing. Once you've kind of understood it, you want to understand why you're procrastinating for that specific task. For me, I have in my kind of daily journal where I write out the things that I need to do, I have one section that's for big projects. The way I have it written out right now is it's really just a word or 2 for the big project. The next step isn't broken out. And sometimes when I look at those, I have a twinge of procrastination where I think, I'm not ready to do that yet. Being able to know why is really critical because it's different for every task. Some tasks maybe have people that you need to go talk to that you're not interested in talking to. Maybe there's something that you need to learn more about and you don't feel like you're kind of ready or you have enough knowledge or you don't know where to go learn these things from. It might be that you don't have the tool or maybe the money to go move forward on this thing. Whatever it is, you really need to understand why you're procrastinating about it and really wrap your head around that entirely so that you can, one, kind of bucket the different things that you procrastinate about. So therefore you're learning more about yourself. Why that's helpful is when you create new tasks for yourself in the future or something's given to you, you kind of build up this library in your head of hey, this type of task, I know I procrastinated on, I know why, and now I can fix that for the future. So that's a really important kind of aspect in all this is really understanding why. The other reason understanding why is how else can you take your next steps, right? If you're not sure, why it is that you're procrastinating about something, then you're ultimately not really going to be able to move forward on it. And I know I'm breaking this out into longer steps, and some of this can happen as you're evaluating in a moment of seconds. But just with the first one on awareness, it's important to kind of break out these steps because ultimately, it's a muscle that you're building, right? And you want it to become second nature, but the awareness, the consciousness is what's going to help you move forward in all of these. It's important to kind of break it out into different steps. You're aware that you're procrastinating. You know why you're procrastinating. Now it's time to start taking some action and start thinking about and breaking out what are the next steps. And it might just be one next step. The thing that I found for myself is if I know the immediate next step, I can at least take some progress on it. And usually it's something pretty small that I found as a next step. It's just starting this conversation, reaching out to this one person, opening this document, or even just like blocking out time on my calendar to really dedicate time to this thing. Once I've identified that next step, now it feels a lot more manageable. Now it feels like, okay, I can actually start chipping away at this. The kind of like secret to all this is momentum. Because once you get going, you start to relieve that anxiety, you start to get more confident, you realize, oh hey, I don't know why I was procrastinating in the first place. This is much easier, I feel so much better about this. You continue to kind of like steamroll and snowball on this problem. This happened to me yesterday actually. There was this long-term kind of document that I wanted to build up that is meant to be like a long-term resource for people to understand this one aspect of our game. It's one of those things that's like important but not urgent. And so I kept putting it off because, there's other stuff to be doing. And I realized like basically a month had gone by since I even thought about this thing. So, hey, what's the kind of first step that I can take? You don't need to like sit down for 6 hours and grind this whole thing out. Just take the first step. And so I created the page on our internal website, and I just started listing out like what are the questions I want to have answered. And that's it. And I saved it. And I shared the link with a few people and I asked, hey, if you have more questions that you think need to get answered for this resource, let's throw them on here. And now I can come back to it in a week or chip away at it and say, oh, I've got an answer to this. I'm going to start plugging in this info, this. By the end of probably this month, I'll have a way more fleshed out document that has all the things that I need. In my head, it was like, again, this like really big project that I needed to do. It's going to take me hours. Oh, when am I going to find this time? But in reality, I was able to just take a first step and make some progress at it. And now when I go back into it, I've set it up in a way that I can continue to like chip away at it. And I feel like I can actually get it done. I actually have confidence now of like, okay, I understand this more now. I'm ready to go. That was huge. And taking that first next step and identifying and breaking it down, has given me this confidence now. And the last step is, okay, now go after that first step like I just did with the project that I had. So now you've kind of taken this thing and you've broken it out into smaller steps, or at least you know what the first next step is, and that should immediately make things less scary because all you're focused on again is taking that next step and let the kind of rest come after. I think it's easy to get caught up and think about, again, like, how am I gonna get all of this done? Or there's so many unknowns here. Usually your first step is known. Even if your like next step is identifying your next steps and like doing work to kind of break this big problem down into smaller problems, that's good. Because at least that's a starting point and that's progress. And ultimately, again, what you're trying to do is move along this spectrum. You're not trying to go from like awful to perfect. Like those things don't exist. Like they're just like made up in our heads. It is a spectrum. You're trying to be more productive. You're trying to procrastinate less. So you're trying to move along the spectrum. And even the act of like breaking down next steps and going after the first one is progress. And so don't underestimate that. Don't think that's not like valuable. Don't judge yourself for that. All of those kind of negative thoughts are only going to help make you procrastinate more, honestly. It's going to fill you with thoughts of lack of self-worth and thinking that you can't do anything and losing confidence. And that snowballs in a negative direction. And then you're swinging along the spectrum in the wrong direction. So don't do that. Now that you have the tool of awareness and being conscious of when you're procrastinating, you can recognize it and stop yourself and say, whoa, I'm procrastinating. I'm giving myself negative self-thought. I'm gonna just go after what's the first next step here? What is it? Let's write it down, let's type it up, whatever it might be. I'm gonna go after that. I can do this in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, or I'm gonna set aside time for this and say, hey, tomorrow 9 a.m., I'm clearing my calendar because I'm gonna go do this next step. Just start and you might find that you continue to roll on and continue with the steps that follow. So those are the 4 steps for tackling procrastination. Hope this video helped for you. And honestly, it helped me just kind of like thinking about this once again and being conscious of how I procrastinate and how it impacts me. So that's gonna do it for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed it and I'll see you in the next one.